Good afternoon. So I've been putting these videos together and accumulating all of the information, and it's remarkable that things are changing so quickly. The amount of money being spent, the degree and the gravity of actions being taken in states, municipalities, and within the federal government. Things are happening at such a rapid pace that by the time I'm even remotely finished creating a video, all of the numbers and data have increased and changed. So it's been somewhat of an extremely, very fast-moving target. So I'm going to summarize right here with a few things. Here's what we do know. We know the amount of money being spent in the repo market at night for the banks is staggering. It's beyond what you can comprehend. We know the bailouts of institutions, very hand-picked, is happening at levels that we can't comprehend. The things that are taking place behind the scenes are really, we can't comprehend that the things that are taking place could be taking place so quickly. But it points to a preconceived agenda when something like that happens. One example of this is that as a developer, as somebody that could put together something like the Johns Hopkins University website that is tracking the coronaviruses, I don't think anybody understands for that thing to be accurate, for it to come out just literally days into this, to have somehow established the ability for every single medical facility or physician's office in remote towns and remote regions in the world, somehow that they're sharing this data to be accurate. And this is the data that would become history. And it's a lie, because it would be impossible for them to do such a thing in such a short period of time. Technologically, I can tell you that would be years in the making. Now, let's just say that maybe they have been building that thing for years. That's also a possibility. So with that said, I want you to understand how I see these things, because I see that those are faulty numbers, but those will become the recorded numbers. And so what we're seeing happening right now is we are seeing the effort to meet those numbers rather than to allow those numbers to be actuated because of factual things on the ground. Now, the factual things on the ground, quote, factual, are really not factual. So a patient that dies of a heart attack is listed as the cause of death as being COVID-19. Well, they can rationalize this. Remember, I've told you that the truth and the lie is always in the same line. It's remarkable. They can say, well, it did kill them, because it honestly did, because we didn't have the time to tend to the person having the heart attack because we had all these COVID-19 patients. So COVID-19 killed that person even though they died of a heart attack, adding to the fear and the craziness that will be the prime purpose, the prime reason for instituting more draconian measures will be the increases of these numbers, but these numbers will be predicated upon false information. They already are. They already are. Right now, we have not exceeded where we would be currently in the year for average pneumonia deaths. So all of the average pneumonia deaths, which equate to, according to the CDC's website, to 50,000 people per year that die of pneumonia, viral pneumonia. So now all of those 50,000 people that would die this year are not going to die of pneumonia. They're going to die of COVID-19. So this is the usurp something that already exists. It's not a pandemic in that way. In any other way, they want to create more extremes they can, because everybody has bought what? They have bought the numbers, and they have bought the authority. They are trusting the authority of the government to speak to them, and they're trusting that. This is dangerous on levels that people will see, because unfortunately, the predictions of things taking place in the Bible where people would like to say that it's Jesus causing these things. But see, just like I've always said, in the same line is multiple meanings, truths and lies, all of them. So when you have somebody ruling with a rod of iron, well, there's the physical aspect of a spiritual document, because the spiritual understanding of these scriptures is what you need to understand. The physical elements of how it is mimicked and usurped by those in power will help you understand how they have utilized the institutions of religion and the documents that are intended to be spiritual and wisdom documents to help you see both sides of this, because the physical will always mimic the spiritual. It will just corrupt it. It will be a different version. The prayer of Christ on earth as it is in heaven is that everything would cease being corrupted and people would understand the gravity and the depth of the spiritual nature of these documents and not the physical nature. The physical nature being of the world, the spiritual nature being not of the world. Well, this is who we are, not of this world. I'm not of any part of this at all. I want no part of it. So what does all of this mean? Because these draconian measures aren't just here in this country. This is an international consolidation of power and wealth and control of the people. A recent article, which was written by Henry Kissinger, a very well-known member of the U.S. government and a very well-known member of CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. Well, the Council on Foreign Relations, if you don't know anything about them, you should do a little research, find out what they're all about. Henry Kissinger is a person that is very well respected within that group. And he wrote an article that was very much about establishing the future history narrative of what took place. So it's as if he's writing a document that the governments will rely on to say what actually happened. And the remarkable thing is, he embeds within this some of these lines, and I'll read them to you.
The surreal atmosphere of the COVID-19 pandemic calls to mind how I felt as a young man in the 84th Infantry Division during the Battle of the Bulge. Now, as in late 1944, there is a sense of inchoate danger, aimed not at any particular person, but strikingly, randomly, and with devastation. But there is an important difference between the faraway time and ours. American endurance then was fortified by an ultimate national purpose. Now, in a divided country, efficient and far-sighted government is necessary to overcome obstacles. Now, in a divided country, efficient and far-sighted government is necessary to overcome obstacles, unprecedented in magnitude and global scope. Sustaining the public trust is crucial to social solidarity, to the relation of societies with each other, and to international peace and stability. Nations cohere and flourish on the belief that their institutions can foresee calamity, arrest its impact, and restore stability. Well, no nation can foresee calamity all the time. When the COVID-19 pandemic is over, many countries' institutions will be perceived as having failed. Whether this judgment is objectively fair is irrelevant. The reality is the world will never be the same after the coronavirus. To argue now about the past only makes it harder to do what has to be done. Let's not argue about the Constitution. Let's not argue about those old laws or those old things that clearly could not pass the test. This is what they will say, folks, that the Constitution is a document that could not withstand a pandemic and stay intact. It was a faulty document to begin with. This is what they will say. The coronavirus has struck with unprecedented scale and ferocity. Its spread is exponential. US cases are doubling every 5th day. At this writing, there is no cure. Now, this is the type of statement At this writing, there is no cure. He's writing this for posterity. Medical supplies are insufficient to cope with the widening waves of cases. Intensive care units are on the verge and beyond being overwhelmed. Well, we've already seen that hasn't necessarily taken place, now has it? Testing is inadequate to the task of identifying the extent of the infection, much less reversing its spread. A successful vaccine could be 12 to 18 months away. Well, since we have never had a vaccine for the common cold or the coronavirus, all variations of them, the likelihood that they'll have a vaccine that is effective is probably nil and none. However, that vaccine will have very different intentions. The U.S. administration has done a solid job in avoiding immediate catastrophe. The ultimate test will be whether the virus's spread can be arrested and then reversed in a manner and at a scale that maintains public confidence in Americans' ability to govern themselves. This crisis effort, however vast and necessary, must not crowd the urgent task of launching a parallel enterprise for the transition to the post-coronavirus order. Leaders are dealing with the crisis on a largely national basis, but the virus's society dissolving effects do not recognize borders. They're removing the borders. While the assault on human health will hopefully be temporary, the political and economic upheaval it has unleashed could last for generations. Generations. No country, not even the US, can purely national effort overcome the virus. Addressing the necessities at the moment must ultimately be coupled with a global collaborative vision and program. If we cannot do both in tandem, we will face the worst of each. Drawing lessons from the development of the Marshall Plan and the Manhattan Project, the U.S. is obliged to undertake major effort in 3 domains. We're obliged. First, shore up global resilience to infectious disease. Now, that is a massive undertaking that will cost trillions of dollars and a trampling of almost every single right you've ever known, you ever thought you had. Triumphs of medical science like the polio vaccine and the eradication of smallpox, or the emerging statistical technical marvel of medical diagnoses through artificial intelligence, have lulled us into a dangerous complacency. We need to develop new techniques and technologies for infection control, and commiserate vaccines across large populations. Cities, state, and regions must consistently prepare to protect their people from pandemics through stockpiling, cooperative planning, and exploration at the frontiers of science. Second, strive to heal the wounds to the world economy. Global leaders will have learned important lessons from the 2008 financial crisis. By the way, this is nothing like that crisis. The current economic crisis is more complex. The contraction unleashed by the coronavirus is, in its speed and global scale, unlike anything ever known in history. Necessary public health measures such as social distancing, closing schools and businesses are contributing to the economic pain. Programs should also seek to ameliorate the effects of impending chaos on the world's most vulnerable populations. Third, safeguard the principles of the liberal world order. Safeguard the principles. It's funny, these statements, the principles. What are those principles? The founding legend of modern government. The founding legend of modern government is a walled city protected by powerful rulers, sometimes despotic, other times benevolent, yet always strong enough to protect the people from an external enemy. Enlightenment thinkers reframed this concept. Now, who are these Enlightenment thinkers? These Enlightenment thinkers are the Luciferians, which is what this word, is all about. So, arguing that the purpose of the legitimate state is to provide for the fundamental needs of the people, security, order, economic well-being, and justice. These are all what God is supposed to supply to you and does. You just don't know where to find it anymore. It's only found in government. Individuals cannot secure these things on their own. Individuals cannot secure these things on their own. The pandemic has prompted an anachronism, a revival of the walled city in an age when prosperity depends on global trade and the movement of people. The world's democracies need to defend and sustain the Enlightenment values. The global retreat from balancing power with legitimacy will cause the social contract to disintegrate both domestically and internationally. Yet this millennial issue of legitimacy and power cannot be settled simultaneously with the effort to overcome the COVID-19 plague. Restraint is necessary on all sides in both domestic policy and international diplomacy. Priorities must be established. We went from the battle of the bulge into a world of growing prosperity and enhanced human dignity. Now we live in an epochal period. The historical challenge for leaders is to manage the crisis while building the future. Failure could set the world on fire. Well, isn't that nice?
Now that you've heard those, you can see how they think about you. You can hear it. And then you can watch what's taking place around you. And then you begin to realize, when you're not of this world, just really who you are. Because what we need to be, and if I can illustrate what walking in Christ is for me, when you see a fast-moving river, the amount of power behind that water is incredible. But then you find this immovable rock that sits right in the middle, and those roaring rapids flow around it. It doesn't bother the rock. The island in the stream, that's you. That's me. That's us. That's how we stay out of this vortex that they're creating. That immovable rock means also that when you are pushed to violate the spiritual principles that have granted you and given you your peace, when you sacrifice those, you become part of the world again. Holding fast, enduring till the end, means sitting amongst that fast-moving water and the power that surrounds it, and recognizing that it is powerless against it, because the only thing anyone can try to hold over you in this world ultimately is death. So it isn't death necessarily that most people fear. Malia and I have talked on this much. It's really suffering. They fear suffering. But understand that when you know that no matter how much suffering that you endure, it fills you. When you're in Christ, suffering is Christ. Because you know that they can't take anything from you. And so it's a physical pain that you endure. But the spiritual aspect, and I can speak to this personally, makes that pain numb. When I was beaten within an inch of my life by guards and police, there was a point in time where I could only hear it. And I was calm because I knew they can't hurt me and they can't hurt you. I love you very much, and we'll talk again soon.